when it comes to trying to be creative about an idea, think about something differently. And there's no company that has the one answer. I think it's about finding ways to work within the organization and externally with clients in innovative and creative ways. That everyone knows the buzzwords, brainstorming, whiteboarding, mind mapping, all that kind of stuff. In some ways, groups know enough just to be dangerous. They can't really utilize brainstorming or any of those techniques, which are great techniques, always to the best of their abilities. People on one side of the table not paying attention, sharing an inside joke, another person sketching, something completely unrelated to the topic. The intentions are always good and they're always in the right places. It's sort of like they're on the right path but with the wrong map. When a group comes together, they really need to understand 4 key things. Understanding the language, understanding authority, who's in charge of the meeting, understanding direction, which is the point, the agenda, the goal of the meeting, and then understanding roles. So that's not only their own role, but also the roles of their fellow employees. If you think about a family, in my family, I'm the youngest sibling, and I always played that role, right? But I also had other roles with the family, like taking out the trash or cleaning up after the dog. And when groups would come together and they wouldn't understand those 4 things, it led to the group flighting or fighting during the brainstorming process. Developing things that you can bring to the table, physical objects, just completely changes the nature of the way groups inside the organization or with a client. We call them design interventions because they worked very much like that, just like a drug and alcohol intervention. You kind of change the nature of the task. My focus has shifted out of my brain to this thing, this tool, this physical object, card, whatever it is, and I'm able to focus on that to achieve the task. So, we see these archetypes throughout history, like conch shells, being the king holds the conch shell, or tarot cards, that use certain sort of tropes and ideas to deal with anxiety about uncertainty in the future, things like that. But really at the core, they all serve the same purpose. They're identifiers, they're power mechanisms, they're group mechanisms, and they basically help to identify a situation and change the nature of that situation. By creating these roles and asking them to play them almost like a game, it reduced their anxiety because they knew that their issues were being dealt with, and it didn't cause any power struggles because they could feel comfortable knowing that someone was going to speak up on their behalf, someone was going to be taking notes, someone was going to get them back on track. The white elephant's a favorite of groups because it basically gives that person who gets that card basically call out the boss. Each person plays a role to satisfy the anxieties of the group. So when that person raises their hand and they call out someone, it's like a release for the group. They feel like their voice has been heard, but it's in a managed way, it's in a controlled way. One of the founders of IDEO had written a book, and he talked about how the devil's advocate should be removed completely from all creative discussions because it just kills ideas straight from the start. And in theory, he's completely right, but in reality, he's completely wrong. And by that, I mean, you can't get rid of it. It's ingrained in us. It's in our brain. It's human nature. I mean, that's one of the key things to group dynamics and understanding. You can't do anything about group dynamics and the roles you play. You can only try to manage them. So that's what we did with the devil's advocate. If you give one person that role, they're going to play it. They're going to play it every time. They're going to play it often, and the group's going to feel satisfied. As you see so often in meetings, people sitting around texting, they're emailing, they're drawing something, they're making a grocery list, they're cracking a joke with a friend, they're not paying attention. So the documenter kind of accepts that in a way and says, look, not everybody's going to take notes here, but also gives that role to someone so that they are the ambassador in a way for the group to make sure that notes are taken, so that make sure that everyone knows what they have to do when they walk away from it. It's not a fun role for everyone to play, but the benefit of not having someone always have to play it is that, this week it might be me, next week it might be you. Everybody's been in meetings where things were way too complex. So things are communicated, someone does a mini dissertation for 10 minutes about what needs to happen, and the group kind of, for lack of interrupting and have them go over it again, just sort of nods, yes, okay, fine, that's good. The simplifier's role is to take that complex idea and essentially tame that complexity and simplify the concept. So this is a role that, certain people have different proficiencies at, but it's really important because if you explain something really complex, it's my job to listen, maybe sketch some things, maybe write some bullet points, and then come back to the group and essentially say, if I notice that there's a lack of understanding, here's what he or she just said. And are we all in agreement with that? The meeting goes on and on and on. We start talking about topic A. 5 minutes later, we're talking about topic B, then topic C, then we're not necessarily talking about what we came to meet about anymore. Half the people are wondering why they're still in the meeting. What are we talking about? Is anything productive? So that's the role there. The navigator is there to raise their hand and go, guys, this is great. We've come up with some cool thoughts. Some people have had some interesting insights, not necessarily relevant to what we have to get done here, so want to get everyone back on track. And I think it's important too for the navigator not just to say, we're going to forget all that stuff, but hopefully the person documenting it, the documenter, can take notes of those things, and they can be follow-up items. They can be ideas that the group comes back and meets on about later. The key to it is if you keep on asking someone why, you'll get to the core of what's going on. So we wanted to put someone like that in the group where a concept can be thrown out there and they ask just why, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. And eventually you'll sometimes push someone in a frustrated way, but in an important way to clarifying exactly what they mean and in exactly the intentions of their comment. You're Invited is blatantly a card that is a group card, sits on the table, I can grab it and I can literally invite someone back to the conversation. So it's a little cheeky, but sometimes no matter what you do to give people roles, or if the group is larger than the number of role cards, you have to kind of go right out on a limb and just invite someone back to the conversation. And sometimes that can be offensive, it can be taken the wrong way, but I think it's important to communicate. We want you back in the conversation because we think you have something to add, rather than it's kind of annoying us, you're not contributing. So that card is an important one that the group can use throughout the meeting as much as they want. Doing a great job, offering a lot of insight, really helping the group maybe in and outside of their role. And you just want to recognize that, because recognizing that in the meeting, even though it's a tiny, tiny little thing, they're going to feel good about that meeting. They're going to feel like they really helped during that group interaction. And setting up that sort of positive reward, that sort of positive feedback, next time you meet, that person who gets the gold star, they're going to go for that gold star again. It's so simple. It's a gold star on a piece of paper, but it actually matters. Create Your Own was our attempt to give the group a way to feel like they still had say. So we gave them all these things. We thought they would be good tools, good roles, good things they could do, but we didn't want them to feel like it was all predetermined and that we were dictating to them how we could solve it. So we gave a Create Their Own, and they could write on it with a dry erase marker and essentially develop or invent a role that they could use whenever they came together. They have to have some sort of physical and or visual aspect to them. They have to come out of the brain, out of the written form, and they have to be something that is tangible that people can point to and talk to. I mean, we've been using imagery to communicate a lot longer than we've been using written language. So I think it's no surprise that that's a really effective way to get through creative meetings and creative processes. It's a voice. It's a voice for the group. It alleviates their stress. It helps them concentrate on why they're there together and what they're trying to achieve, and less on who's there and what they're doing there. It gives them an outlet. It makes them feel like their voice is being heard. And I think it also helps them just focus on what they're hired to do. Be creative, come up with great stuff for clients, and want to create great stuff for clients.